Corinthians chapter 7, and Paul is talking here about being married or being single. What are the advantages to either case, and some basic counseling, if you will, about being in the state you're in, or do you seek to change it? And of course, Paul was not married. Okay, there seems to be some confusion because he does talk about his son. Well, his son in the faith is when he mentions that multiple times. Timothy, yeah, he always referred Timothy as my son. Well, he treated him just as if he was a real son, but Paul was not married, did not have any children. And he says, hey, this is the state that I want to be in, okay? But that's not for everybody, as he will say here. So we open chapter 7. It says, now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, apparently they had asked him this question, is it good for a man not to touch a woman? Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Okay? Should we get married or should we not? Okay? That is the question. Okay? Now think about the situation there in Corinth. So what is the deal? Okay? What was that which was going around so frequently there in the city of Corinth? What about our own society today? Okay, fornication, sexual promiscuous, okay? And that was considered normal, okay, the norm, okay? So the people has, should we stay single? Should we get married? What's the deal? Now, even today, there's a big deal. Some religious groups teach that their ministers should not be married. Okay? The Roman Catholics just elected a new pope. Okay? The popes, the cardinals and all, what does the Roman Catholic Church teach them about marriage? It's not supposed to be for them. They're supposed to be celibate. Okay? Yeah. And so, does that work well for them throughout the centuries? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. For some, probably works fine. For others, not so well. Well, the same question's here. Okay. Now, it's kind of funny because they always try to say that Peter, Simon Peter, was the first pope. So if Simon Peter, Jesus healed Simon Peter's mother-in-law, what is that? What can you gain from that information? He had a wife, okay? Because if you got a mother-in-law and you don't have a wife, that doesn't make sense, okay? So yeah, so this was addressed to Paul, and Paul's given his answer here. And as Paul says, if you're single, okay, that's fine. But he also, in verse 2 here says, if you're married, that's a fine state to be in too. Where did marriage come from? From God, okay? God made Adam. He made a helpmeet for Adam, Eve, okay? And he said they're joined together, okay? When we do our marriage vows, okay, we repeat that we're joined together. And how long does that last? Until I get tired of her, and Okay. Mike and Elva, we had was yesterday your actual anniversary? Okay. So their 50th wedding anniversary yesterday. So how long have you guys been married? 54? Okay. Jerry, how long you guys got? 41? Dave, where are you guys at? 40 some? We'll ask Diane. Okay, no. 43? Cindy and I are coming up on our 50th next month. Bobby Joe, how many you got? 28? Jerry's standing back there. I know they're a lot more than us. Okay. Let's see, 60, was it their 65th we celebrate here a little while back? So I think they're at 67, somewhere in there. So, married a long time. Is that, in our society, is that the norm? It used to be. People went into a marriage, and, that was, you stayed married, okay? How blessed we are, okay? It used to be, and as Pastor will tell you, a family that's divorced, the kids were really, they reached out to those kids and to help them and stuff because it was not normal, okay? Nowadays, if you went into a school system and you asked the kids how many of their parents are divorced, it probably way over half, okay? That's just the way the society was. Well, we think this has, never happened before. Well, guess what? It was happening way, way, way back here. So Paul's addressing these situations. Okay, look at verse 3. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power over her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband hath not power over his own body, but the wife. Okay? What's he talking about? Well, if you're married, are you responsible for your spouse? Do you do things to protect, please your spouse? Okay? Used to be a common thing that a marriage, they say a marriage is a 50-50 proposition. No, it's not. It's a 100-100. Okay? You don't give half, you give all. Okay? Unfortunately, in our society, they got this mentality. Okay? I will stay married as long as I get something out of it. If I don't feel like it anymore, or if I don't feel that I'm getting what I'm supposed to be getting, I want out of it. And a lot of people, they go into a marriage with the mentality is, well, if this doesn't work out for us, we can just get a divorce and we don't have to worry about it. It's not permanent. This is just a temporary situation. And a lot of people won't even take the step of getting married. They just, will start living together and stuff. They say, well, we don't have to get married. That's way too permanent, if we do that. We got to test waters and make sure if this is going to work for us or not. I'm not sure that's the way it's supposed to work. Okay? Yep. There is if you watch any of the court shows and stuff, or read, there's so many things. People, they live together, but they want protections and same rights as if they were a married couple. Those don't exist. Okay? Bank accounts and everything else. If you're married, everything is considered joint property. Okay? If you're not married, even though you're living together, that's not joint property. Doesn't matter if you bought a house or whatever. You know, it's a real messy situation, you know, if you're trying to separate and say, this is mine, that's mine, you know, no, it's can be a very real mess, okay? But you're responsible. You pay attention to what the spouse needs, okay? You know, do we have a place to live? Is that important as a couple? Yeah, okay. Do we have food? Do we have the clothes we need? Do we have, you know, there's lots of things there that you're responsible. Now, if you're a single person, you know, you worry about yourself, but you don't have to be that concerned about another person, okay? There's a big difference between being single and being married, and Paul goes on a little bit to explain some of that, as he says in verse 4 there, okay? The wife, okay, she has to be, as he says, hath not power over her own body. Her husband has a say in some stuff, okay? The same way, the wife over the husband, okay? The wife has a say in things, okay? That's how the situation is supposed to work, okay? Now, there are some that think, I'm the king of the house, what I say goes, nobody can question me, right? No, that's not how it's supposed to work, okay? Why are you smacking him? Because he's laughing at you? Okay. You know, it's the same with finances and everything else, you know. In some households, one or the other handles the finances, okay? Maybe one or the other just does it, better at it, whatever, okay? Does that mean the other spouse should not know what's going on? Or has not a say in it? Well, I can just go buy anything I want anytime I want. She's not going to tell me what to do, right? I want to go do this, I want to go do that, you know, it's just, no, I always say marriage is a give and take. You know, some things you give on, some things, you know, you want to hang on to, but it's both ways, you know, it's just not one person saying, this is it, this is the law, this, you know, no. Both people are involved in this situation, okay? Verse 5 says, defraud not one another, except it be for consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency, excuse me. You know, you give yourself to each other, okay? That's part of marriage, okay? If, you know, you don't withhold, okay, because you're mad at them, or, you know, until you get your way, you know, and that's, he says, don't do that. Incontinency, going without. Okay, it's a sexual term for not having sexual relations, basically. Okay, if you're denying each other a sexual relationship, what is probably going to happen after a time is that other spouse is going to seek it somewhere else, okay? And that's what he's saying. Don't do that. Don't defraud each other that way, okay? Within your marriage, this is where that sexual relationship should be taking place, that intimacy. Don't seek it outside of that, okay? Don't, you know, because well, she won't give me what I want, or, you know, whatever you want to call it there, you know, that they would think they had to go somewhere else. And again, within the city of Corinth, they probably didn't have far to go. Okay? They just go down to the temple. You know, unfortunately, that's the way that was. So that's what he's talking about there. Says, but then he goes on, but I speak this by permission and not by commandment. Paul says, this is my opinion, okay? There's not a commandment of God that covers this. This is what I think God wants us to do. Okay? That's what he's saying here. For I would that all men were even as I myself. Of course, he is single. Okay? But every man that has his proper gift of God, one after this manner, and another after that. I say, therefore, to the unmarried and the widows, it is good for them that they abide even as I. Okay? This is being single. Okay? But if they cannot contain, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn. Okay? Paul's saying, if you're single and you're content to do that and God can use you that way, stay single. Don't seek for a spouse. Don't think you have to go get a spouse. Okay? Because you can probably do more for the Lord as a single person. Okay? But Paul says it's not for everyone. Okay? If you think you need to be married, get married. Okay? But remember, if you get married, what's supposed to happen? Stay married. Okay? Don't get married thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, I can just get divorced. No. Yeah. Because he's talking about, people that have never been married, and then he also addresses widows and widowers by connotation here in a little bit. But it says, don't, just because you find yourself not married, don't think you have to get married. If you find yourself married, that's the wrong way to say that. If you're married, don't seek to get out of your marriage. Okay? But he does give some situations here. Okay? Go on to verse 10. And on to the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord tells us, let not the wife depart from her husband. But, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. But doesn't Moses in law give an out to put away their wife? Okay.
At the beginning, it was not so.
Did God set up marriage with an out? No, he didn't. Okay. When God sanctioned marriage, designed marriage, however you want to put it, it was a man and a woman joined together in marriage for the rest of their lives. Okay? Till death do us part. Okay? That's how long it's supposed to last. Okay? So if you're in a marriage relationship, okay, now he says specifically, let not the husband put away his wife, as was unfortunately common practice, not only among the Jews, but among all these other nations as well. They could put away their wife. And in some societies, it was real simple. I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee, and it's the result. It's gone. It's over and done with. They didn't even have to go to court. Now the Jews had to give, the husband would give the wife a letter of divorcement. Okay. Now this was primarily sanctioned for the betrothal period. Now our society and their society is different. When they entered into what we would call an engagement, what they called the betrothal, is like an engagement, but even more so. It was you actually were entering in between the two of them a formal contract. Okay? It was the marriage. It was they would usually wait a year before the actual marriage ceremony took place. Now, how do we know all that? Well, remember Mary and Joseph? They were betrothed, but Mary was found with child. And what was Joseph's reaction to this?
He was gonna put her away privately.
Okay.
She could have been stoned.
Yeah. The punishment, okay, for getting pregnant while you're, other than your betrothal, okay. So in other words, he found out you're pregnant by someone else. You could have had her stoned. Okay. He was going to do it privately to save both of their reputations, if at all possible. But he was going to do that. And the angel visited him and said, nope, this is of the Lord. Go ahead and you guys are going to get married and continue on as a family. But you don't put away, okay? And of course they asked Jesus, well, why did Moses give us permission to do that if you're telling us that we're not supposed to be doing that? And the answer was because of the hardness of their hearts. God knew they were going to do it. Okay? So he kind of left them out, but they were using it way beyond what it should have been used for. It was, oh, I'm tired of this woman, I want a different one. So they, yeah, adultery, yep. Some of them did, but even throughout their history in the Jewish people, now once you get to the kings, where we hear a lot more among the kings having multiple wives, but most people didn't have multiple wives. There's a few of them that did. Samuel's parents, Hannah and Elkanah. There was another wife in there too. So there were some instances, but not. I mean, it wasn't unknown. Well, Jacob, ended up with. He thought he had 2. He had 4. But unfortunately, but God didn't set it up that way. Okay, that's not the way it was designed. Well, that too, and there was also your longevity, life expectancy wasn't all that much. And a lot of so yes, there was usually a lot of widows and fatherless children around. So sometimes they would, that widow would be taken into another family, become a wife in another family. Huh? Yep. So yeah, her husband died, and Boaz took her as a wife. No, he didn't. Nope. According to everything we see, there's nothing in there that says Boaz had another wife. Whenever they're mentioned just the 2 of them.
The interesting thing about that is Boaz was Rahab's
Grandson.
And she was a harlot. And so that might have been one of the reasons
She was from Jericho.
why Boaz was not married, because of his lineage. He still was in the line of David, but
Yeah, both.
his grandma was a harlot from another country.
But Boaz, Obed, Jesse, and on down the line. Okay. So God had designed marriage, but God has some commandments for marriage there. All right. Verse 11. But if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband. Let not the husband put away his wife. Okay, if they're separated. Okay. What should happen? They should try to get back together again. Does that happen very often? It does in some cases. Okay. We know a couple 3 times.
Yeah.
that they've been,
Tried to reconcile several times.
yeah,
too.
well, I'm thinking of Patty and Bruce. They got divorced, got remarried, got divorced, got remarried, got divorced, they're back together, remarried. You know, it's like, huh? What's going on here? Can't live with them, can't live without them, you know. But so if Paul's saying there, if they get separated, if they're divorced, they should try to reconcile together, not go seek another partner. Okay. If they're widowed, different situation. Okay. Verse 12. But to the rest speak I. Again, he's given his opinion, not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. Excuse me. And a woman which hath a husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now they be holy. Okay. What's he talking about? A couple, married couple, one of them gets saved. Okay? Some people were teaching, unfortunately, that if in a marriage, if one of you gets saved and the other one doesn't get saved right away, you should separate. Paul's saying no. Okay. If they still wish to be together, okay, even though one of them's not saved, you should stay together. Well, isn't that wrong to be unequally yoked?
No.
What is Paul saying here? No, if it pleased, okay, if you can still live together, stay together. Because you don't know if your actions as a Christian how much influence that is going to have on that spouse, that they too may get saved. Okay? Don't immediately think you have to separate in this situation because you're saved and they aren't. Stay together. Now, does that mean that you beat them constantly with your Bible? It won't work. No. That's the way to drive the wedge in. Okay? But they should see it in your actions, in your lifestyle, in your speech. Okay? That's the testimony that you're going to have to give them. So, and then through your actions, in your words, maybe they'll come to the Lord. Okay? But this is what you should see. Don't it, because people say, oh, I got saved and they're not, so I can't be with them. And they were separating. Okay? Paul said, no, that's not what you should be doing here. You should be working as the Christian in the home to bring that other one to Christ. Verse 15. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. Sometimes when one gets saved, it's an unlivable situation, okay? And the unsaved person does not want to dwell with the saved person, okay? And they will separate. Paul's saying sometimes that happens, okay? Is that what the Lord wants? No, but sometimes it happens, okay? But if that happens to you, what should you do? Go seek out another partner? No. Stay single. Try to reconcile yourself. Still be a witness to that person, okay? But don't try to force the issue, because that's not going to go well for you. That's not going to be good for you, okay? Verse 16, for what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? In other words, that being that witness to the unsaved person. But as God hath distributed to every man, as the Lord hath called every one, so let him walk. And so ordain I in all churches. If any man being called, being circumcised, let him not come uncircumcised. If any called be uncircumcised, let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Let every man abide in the same calling wherewith he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it, but if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord, being a servant, is the Lord's freeman. Likewise also he that is called, being free, is Christ's servant. Okay? Gets a little confusing and a little muddled here. In the Roman culture, in the Greek culture as well, having slaves or bondmen, bondwomen, was a common practice. Okay? What if you are a servant, a bondman, and you got saved? Does that automatically change your relationship to your master?
It's just like the wife and the husband.
Okay.
You try to be a witness to the person.
Yeah. What if your master is a saved person? And you, as the bondman, are saved as well. Don't they automatically release you from your bond?
Not really.
Okay. The society wasn't that way. Okay. But, okay, should the attitude change? Okay. Now, in some cases, someone who is, a bond person, a slave, a servant here, this word servant means slave, how you should think about this. Now, we use it sometimes in a working situation, the employee to the employer, okay? How should we treat the master or the employer?
With respect
Okay?
and obedience.
If you, are working, do you do just the bare minimum? Trust me, if you've ever been in a shop, you see that. Okay? People do it, just enough to get by, just enough to keep them out of trouble. And you think, how does the business stay in business if you got people doing this? And you got other people work very hard, okay? They want to do everything to the best of their abilities, okay? To make themselves, happy about their work, but make the company profitable. Okay, because of the labor that they're putting into it. Okay, are you doing it? Okay, to get my paycheck. Are we doing this, to make the business succeed? You're doing it for the Lord, yeah. Whatever you do it for the Lord with all your might. Okay, who's our master? God is. Okay. Yes, you may have, someone in your chain of command. I used the chain of command. I was in the military for 19 years, so I'm real familiar with that, okay? No matter where you are, okay, in the military, you have people maybe under you that you're responsible for, and you got people who you are responsible to. You got people up there telling you what to do. I always think it's funny, people go in the military because they're tired of mom and dad telling them what to do. Excuse me? Obviously, you haven't looked at this very well. Everybody's telling you what to do, okay? And you don't get a choice about, no, I don't want to do that. If you're given an order to do something, you do it, okay? Unless it's, something illegal, and then there's some procedures you have to do there. But, people are going to tell you what to do. You do your best. And that's what Paul's saying here, okay? Verse 23. Ye are bought with a price. Be not ye the servants of men. What's the price that was paid for us as saved individuals? The blood of Christ, yeah. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, wherein abide with God. Okay? When you're saved, if you're single, Paul said, you don't have to rush right out and get married. Okay? You can serve God as a single person. Okay? If you're married, don't seek to be single. Okay? Verse 25. Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose, therefore, that it is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man to be so. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. But, and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, shall they have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. But this I say, brethren, the time is short, it remaineth, that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they had wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoiced not, and they that buy as though they possessed not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. But I would have you without carefulness, without worrying. That is, he that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things of the world, how he may please his wife. There is a difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy, both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. Okay? If you're married, you have a concern for the other person, for your spouse. Okay? If you're single, you don't have that. Okay? Paul's saying you can focus more on the Lord. Okay? And doing what the Lord's wanting you to do. If you're married, yes, you focus on the Lord, but your spouse is there too. Okay? You have to be concerned about your spouse. Every once in a while you run into people, they're married, and the one is serving the Lord, but they're doing it to the exclusion of their partner. Okay, or family, just completely ignoring them. That's not right either. Okay, there's a balance there. Paul's saying, if you're married, you got more things to balance, if you will. If you're single, you can put more of your focus into a single area. Okay, Paul's saying, for me, being single works. Okay, what was some other things that Paul had to endure or go through here?
If he had a wife, she would just have been horrified at everything, He's beaten and shipwrecked and gone all the time, and, that would have been a disaster for a relationship.
There was a lot of persecution going on.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you're a married couple and this persecution is going on, are you not concerned, with your spouse? Okay. Now, if you're a single person, you concern yourself about, your own safety and stuff. But if you're married, you have to be concerned about your spouse as well. Okay. That's what he's talking about here. Okay. This persecution that was going on, and this was just getting the start of it. Okay. It got a lot worse in a few years. And he's trying to prepare the people for that. Okay? Verse 35. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. But if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let them do what he will. He sinneth not, let them marry. It's okay to get married. Okay? Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, and hath so decreed in his heart that he will keep his virgin, doeth well. Single person wants to stay single and serve the Lord, great. Okay? They're free to do that. They don't have to go get married. Now, some try to teach, well, you gotta get married. No, not everybody does. Okay? Not everybody can live a single life. Okay? And Paul's given them the instructions here. So then he that giveth her in marriage doeth well. In other words, the father giving her his daughter in marriage, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better. Okay? Don't force, okay, I'm going to say that. Don't force your daughter to get married if she doesn't want to get married. Okay? That's basically what it's saying here. Okay? You don't have to make them get married. Now, especially as Jewish parents, okay, when your daughters get to be a certain age, what are the parents doing? Nagging. They would arrange a marriage or get the matchmaker to arrange a marriage, okay, whether the daughter wanted it or not, okay? Paul's saying it doesn't matter, okay? Don't force her to get married if she don't want to get married, okay? It's fine to be single. The wife, verse 39, the wife is bound by the law as long as her husband liveth, till death do us part. But if her husband be dead, and she is at liberty to be married to whom she will, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she so abide after my judgment, and I think also that I have the Spirit of the Lord. Okay, talking about widow or a widower. Okay, you can apply it both ways. Okay, how long does the marriage relationship last? Huh? Forever? Till one of the partner dies. Okay, that's forever. Okay, after one of the partners die, is that person free then to remarry?
In the Lord.
In the Lord, yeah. Okay, that's what Paul's saying. Okay, now what about before? Okay, one of their partner dies and they just divorce. What about remarriage then?
The only thing is for fornication, I think. And
Yeah.
that,
Well, again, it gets a whole sticky situation. Okay. The only one that's condoned, if you will, is a widow or a widower can remarry to someone who's not a divorcee or a divorcer. Okay, but someone who is single, or maybe another widow or a widow to a widower or whatever. Okay.
if they followed the law, the one who had committed the fornication would be stoned.
Yep.
And then,
And it's a whole different situation. Yep.
yeah.
They had a lot of stonings, or should have had a lot of stonings, if you would. They didn't do it all the time because, well, they were important people. They didn't want to get stoned. Cast the first stone, yeah, as Jesus told them to do. Yep.